Welcome to the 4th grade, 4th 6 weeks curriculum preview. I hope you had a restful holiday and ready to get with it. We're going to start this new year off right. So let's get going. All right, the reading expectations for Unit 4. We want our students at a level S by the end of the 6 weeks. Really would prefer they would be at a level T. If they're a level R, we really need to have some very immediate intervention for them. By the end of the 6 weeks, we want them to be reading independently for 20 minutes with comprehension and fluency. And it really does need to be more than that. If you look at research, it just says that if a child is going to increase their reading scores, they have to be reading 60 minutes throughout the day, off and on, at their instructional reading level to really move. If they read for 30 minutes, then they will stay the same. So reading independently on their instructional level is key to reading success. So looking at those minutes, we know that we need to have them in the independent reading. We also need to have them in our guided reading groups. That small group instruction is also where you're going to make the most bang for your buck. So spend your mini lesson 10 to 15 minutes and get those guys in guided reading lessons. Then if you have those guys that are advanced, put them in literature circles, doing some really advanced things with them to make sure that they're growing as well. We need to make sure that when we're independently reading that we are completing reading responses, that kids are reading and responding to their independent reading. We want you, the expectation is that you complete 1 to 3 weekly. Really prefer that every day that kids are reading independently, there's some type of response. And you'll notice in the presentation, I give you some ideas about that. The reader's notebook is to record their learning. We need to be setting goals and reflecting on how they're growing as a reader. They need to know where they are. And using that reader's notebook, putting things in is so they can use it as a strategic tool while they're reading. I know that I put this in every time, but if you have not looked at the continuum, you really do need to, because what it does is it shows you there are I think 5 tabs, and the last tab is the guided reading levels A through Z, and what it will tell you is this one is just like a synopsis, but in the actual continuum, it will show you how to select text, and then it will also show you word work to do with this type of group and what behaviors you're going to notice, what type of questions you're going to ask. So the continuum is a great tool to help you move kids in small groups. Here is one that someone has created. I'm going to link this on this webpage in Canvas. They took the behaviors and they made, for the level ST, they looked at the behaviors that you're noticing thinking within the text, beyond the text, and about the text. And so I'm going to link that so you can kind of see where you might use this as you assess and watch your kids reading. So those are some great tools. So the reading, with our standards, we want the kids to be able to describe the explicit and implicit relationship among ideas and text organized by cause and effect, sequence, logical order, comparison. And then we also want them reading independently. So let's take a look at how we're going to get there. Word study. The vocabulary words. Vocabulary words and how you pick them is extremely important. So I really would refer you to building vocabulary reading in the curriculum in the Norma Jackson resources. It shows you how to pick up words that are meaningful vocabulary words. And then you're also going to be applying roots and affixes, designated for 4th grade spelling. And then identifying the meaning of just common idioms. All right, and then we have all of our spelling that our grade level spelling will help you with. So let's take a look at that English word study. I hope that you are using your planner. So also getting out your English word study so that you might look with me in week 19 through 20. You're going to do in a snap sight words, transitional words or phrases. And I really do love that Norma has shown you, giving you the word cards that have the hearts that say that these are the the sounds that we just need to put to memory. You can hear the TH in this, but all of these others are just things we just have to put to our memory and heart. So those sight words that are transitional words or phrases, that's week 19 and 20. Week 21 and 22 is adding suffixes to base words that end in Y. So we give you some of the words that you're going to be looking at. Week 23 to 24, we're going to reinforce homophones and frequently misused words. And I'm going to tell you, these are words that they really do when you look in their writing, these are the words that they do not know how to use correctly. So there's some great activities with some cards that you can use with kids to really help them. And this is the type of thing that you would be putting into their writing notebook. Grammar alert. I love the grammar alerts. This 6 weeks you're doing time-ordered transition words and transitions that indicate a conclusion. So this is great because you want them using those great transition words to get that flow through their writing. So you're going to spend time with time-ordered transition words, and the grammar alert gives you some ideas about how to do that. Using adjectives and making sure that you use them correctly, and that you don't flower a paper with adjectives, but that you use the correct one. You're really looking at comparative and superlative adjectives. And then reflective pronouns. Teaching them, when you look at what the standard says, is to understand and use. And so we're giving you some ideas of ways to do and some ideas about reflective pronouns. So that's your grammar alert for this 6 weeks. So let's take a look at what some of the focus lessons might look like. Your iPad app, there's a lot of them out there, but this is one that I found, Super Duper Idioms. For grades 2 and up. That's a great way to use that iPad for them to really play with words and hear words and how idioms are used. This is a flat book that they're using in the blink of an eye, stuck in a rut, and they actually collect idioms. And this is another thing that you would put in that writing notebook. That's something that they could go back to and use, especially with your ELL kids. They need this so badly. Once again, we talked about vocabulary, and this is a great idea to do. Is after reading a mentor text, choose 1 or 2 words that can be added to vocabulary, discuss them, and give students an index card for them to write the word definition in a sentence that shows the meaning, and then draw a picture. And then they just keep these on a ring so they can go back and forth like, I remember that word, because you want the vocabulary that they play with to be words and understand words they're going to see and build upon. So that's a great strategy to use with their vocabulary words. Your academic vocabulary is, we've given that to you in English and Spanish. Folks, here's yours. Making sure that they know how we use those. Like when we say guide words, what does that mean? When we say idioms, what is that? And what is a homophone? How do you use those? And especially with words like playwright, they might see that word and say, what is a playwright, and what does that have to do with it? So teaching them academic vocabulary is extremely important during your word work. All right, so let's take a look at reading. You have 2 lead standards this 6 weeks. They're expected to describe the interaction of characters, including their relationships and the changes they undergo. Oh, we see that one on STAR all the time. And then the expository text. Students are expected to describe explicit and implicit relationships among ideas in text, organized by cause and effect, sequence, or comparison. So those are 2 really big, huge lead standards. So what kind of strategies are you going to put? What kind of processes are we going to remember? They're going to be reading this. We need to make sure that we're reading in their independent reading. We're asking them to look at their characters and monitoring, have the character change in the story that you're reading independently. And then media literacy, you need to check the clarifier for that, because it's expected how they use media and the influences a message, like how to use pacing and close-ups and sound effects. That's really, you can use all kinds of video on YouTube to show them that. The genres that we're going to use with their 2 lead standards are poetry. And our expectation is they're expected to read a wide range of poetry and explain how a poet uses imagery to support the central message. In drama, they're expected to explain how a playwright uses dialogue to develop character traits. And sometimes you see that in the CBA. Sometimes that's a hard one for the kids, following that dialogue. And then with sensory language, they're expected to identify the author's use of similes and metaphors to produce imagery. You're going to see a lot of that on STAR. And then culture and history, we want them to be able to explain the difference between a stated and an implied purpose for an expository text. Why did the author write this? So let's take a look at some focus lessons. Oh, fiction. You can have a lot of fun with interaction of characters and how the changes they undergo. One of my very favorite books is The Lorax, and yes, fourth graders love The Lorax, and how there's several different characters in this story, and about how at the beginning the character was this way and the things that happened and how did they change over time. So another link that I found for you is A Bad Road for Cats, and I've given you the link. It's a read, write, think lesson. I just think it gives you a lot of great things to do, and it shows you how to have a mini lesson with that short story. During independent reading, you're going to want to ask them as they independently read, as a response is thinking about how in your book that you're reading, how are the characters changing and why do they change and what happened to make. And I love this template, this graphic organizer, because it says, title of text, the author, the character's name, provide evidence from the story to support your conclusions. And so you're asking kids to go back into that text, reread for a second time to figure out how they do. So this is something that you would give them. This is a reading response that they would do during a reading workshop. Once again, we're talking about the interaction of characters, and you would model this, and this would be great. Read aloud A Day's Work by Eve Bunting, lists events that occurred during the development of the plot and the impact the events had on Francisco, the main character. Discuss the chart how Francisco changes from the beginning of the story to the end, and identify a specific event that has the greatest impact. So that's a great thing for you to be able to do using that particular story. And then following this in guided reading, like making that, if that is the standard that you're looking for, then follow it in guided reading and teach them that practice of looking at how characters undergo. Here's some great other stories that characters really go through and make changes. So there's you some ideas. Looks like Eve Bunting has some great books on that. In your reading A to Z, you search by the standard, and then what I came up with, Flex Faces His Fears. It's a graphic book, so that might grab some of your boys. So, really having kids interact with characters and how they undergo change, especially too with drama and those type of things. So here's 411 informational expository, and this is organizing texts by how are they organized. So I gave you, and I found this great thing over here for text structure, because it shows what the pattern is in the book, and then what are some words and phrases that you're going to see an author's use to make kids say the author wrote this in a sequence type of way. You might see this in the CBA to say, what did the author use to tell this story? Was it a cause and effect, or was it descriptive, or did they compare, or did they use sequence? So it's really important that kids learn that there are true transition words and phrases that go with those. So after you've taught this lesson, and you've shown them several mentor texts with different types of ways authors represent organizational patterns in their writing, during that independent reading, you're going to give them an index card, and as they read, have them look at how, and especially you're going to say today, I really want you to pick out our informational text from your book box. And I really would like for you to really focus on, as you're reading, how did the author organize this text? And what are some of the transition words and phrases that give me the clue? And then they will be ready to share that during share time. So during the independent reading, you're kind of giving them a purpose to go out for their independent reading. Here are some other ideas that I found. Organizational, describing explicit and implicit relationships. This is Dear Mr. President passage, and I found it from ReadWorks. This is a great lesson for you to do with them, and I've given you the link right here for you to get that. Another thing is in the guided reading book, Jan talks about cause and effect relationships on page 225 to 227. You might want to take a look at that. Read alouds. This is interactive read alouds by Linda Hoyt. There's a great lesson in there on the true story of the Three Little Pigs. That would be a great one. And and then investigating a crime is on 59. And then there's also a reader's theater that goes along with the same thing. And here's the same one that I was talking about, this Dear Mr. President. And I'll attach this particular one to in Canvas as for you as well. So you have some really great stuff to use. Here is another one that's really great that I found, like if you're doing by sequence, and this one is in your Treasures book, Unit 5, Adelina's Wells, and it shows a great way of how author uses sequence in a informational text. And then you could use a graphic organizer like this about how the order of events happened in this book. You would model that, and then you would give the students that graphic organizer to complete with an informational text of their choice. So that could be one of the 3 responses that you do with kids during the independent reading time. Poetry. This is one that the fog poem comes directly off your unit overview, and we've taught you to examine the structure of Sandberg's poem. Is it a rhyming or a free verse poem? Very important that you use that language with kids about, what are the line breaks, how do the line breaks give the poem rhyme, experiment about rewriting the poem with different line breaks. So that one is in your unit overview, and then of course you have the Poetry Friday anthology, which is great to use. With dialogue, this is the other interactive dialogue. The True Story of the 3 Pigs has a lot of dialogue in it, and so very important, helping kids to understand how you follow dialogue in a story and how it can affect and show you about characters. One of the things I really want to talk to you about is in reading workshop, when you send them off to read. We talked a lot in the summer about independent reading, and we've given you the tic-tac-toes. We really want kids having eyes on text. And so after that mini lesson, first thing they should be doing, and maybe the only thing they should be doing during that whole reading workshop time, is independent reading with prompts to help them and with an idea of what they're going to do. You can actually, if you haven't introduced a rubric for independent reading, so you can actually take a grade on, and they can grade themselves on how they're doing at independent reading. So we have some new ideas about how important independent reading is during reading workshop. Guided reading is the heart of your reading workshop. So I hope that you're using your transitional guided reading plan or whatever plan that works with your kids, and then using the continuum as well. That will really help you to guide you during that guided reading. Here is the link once again to that, so use that. Once again, I'm just going to show you the continuum. I've already talked about that. If you need help with that, contact your coach or myself, and we'll help you to show you how that continuum will deeply richen your time with your kids at the table. Can't tell you enough about using the guided reading library. I was in a campus the other day, and teachers were back doing guided reading so greatly, and they were using those wonderful benchmark books that we use. They're so colorful and just engaging for kids. The Reading A to Z are amazing. Just make sure that you're not just always using those because of they're just black and white. And then RAS kids, you want RAS. This could be a piece of independent reading where kids are reading online in their instructional level with RAS kids. So you've got some great resources. So let's talk about writing. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it. You're going to notice that I've given you some links to some great teaching at Binion going on about power paragraphs. You know that we're right now, they are just writing. You're giving them prompts and they're writing, and you're doing power paragraphs. We are and teaching them to just go through the writing process. So the focus lesson, writing support meeting, the next one is January the 26th. The fact lesson plans will be given. Those that came have lesson plans, and so you're going to be following those. And I love power paragraphs. I just think they're amazing. And so if you don't know a lot about paragraphs and aren't able to make the writing support meeting, we need to make sure that you get that. Make sure that they are examining and using the 12-stage analytical writing rubric, and making sure that one fourth grade teacher did a great job about how she's using the rubric. And I'm so thankful to Karen for sharing that with us. As she has the kids, when they do a writing, she brings them back, and they each have a copy of the 12-stage rubric. And as they master the certain things, she's highlighting them in color so they can see. Karen Waite at Richland, you might want to call her and ask her about that. We actually want them to be writing poems if you have time to do that. But those lesson plans that we gave you at Writing Support, that's really what I want you to do. But make sure that you click on the links below and watch the great instruction about power paragraphs. It'll help you a lot. And then remember, the feedback think sheet is having kids think about their writing. Take time for them to focus on what they're doing and what their peers are doing. Just so important. And then make sure you come to January 26th. Letter writing, I love it when I see principals posting things about letter writing. You just want to find opportunities for students to write authentic letters. Write a letter to someone that you did, that did you an act of kindness. I think the janitors are some of the best people to thank. They do such great work in our buildings. Those are type of things. So the expectations by the end of the 6-week unit, the students are expected to complete a minimum of 1 first and 3 draft of expository. So that's the expectation. I'm going to end it with, always your digital media specialists are amazing and they have great tools for you. StoryKit is one that we have a link here for you to look at a story and how they are using that. So contact them if you want to use and to develop some different ways for kids to do their writing using technology. So I hope this has been helpful to you. Please do the discussion for me. It's always so interesting to see you talk to one another, and this one's about collaboration. Make sure that if you need help planning, that you contact your academic coaches or myself. I hope you have a great first of the year.